Take a look at these teams here. What you see up there is a list of teams who have won a national title in the last 20 years on the top in the green. And then in the bottom are teams that we all think are really awesome. But in fact, they have not won a national title in the last 20 years. Now, my take on this, on who's good in college football right now, it's a little bit mixed, but I can tell you right now, there are some teams in that top category that do not belong there. And I believe there are a few teams in the category below that do belong there. So for instance, let's just get this right out of the way. All right. I'm not saying the teams on the bottom are bad teams necessarily. I'm just saying they're not winning championships. So you can't consider them a modern great team. Again, we're going to get into it. I'll tell you why. Agree or disagree. Number one, let's talk about Florida, and let's talk about Florida State. So Florida and Florida State have clearly won national championships in the last 20 years. But the problem is that I just don't think that they're going to win more championships. I just have this feeling that, is Florida ever going to be good in my lifetime again? And honestly, maybe if I live till I'm 90, but I don't see that team in there. And again, questionable team, right? Is have they been in the playoffs? So the answer is yes. Auburn, same thing. I don't know that, but they're going to fall off this list soon. So in those teams minus Florida State, they're going to fall off this list in the next year or two. And maybe somebody down below will be added to the list. The question is which team. And so as you get into the top teams, Alabama, I can see them being great again. Although last couple of years, not so much since Saban left. It tells you right there about how much a coach makes a difference. Michigan, all right. Georgia, they're just perennially like a great team. Double-digit win seasons. Ohio State, it's obvious. Indiana, obvious at this point. I'd say 2-year streak and being great, keeping the same coach. You got to give them credit where credit is due. Clemson and LSU, I think LSU has the ability to be really great, and we'll see with, the coach being there. That's how I refer to him, as the coach. Tough for me to say his name because I just kind of have a disdain for him. But, Clemson, they've got issues. Although they're making the playoffs and they have been winning championships in the last 10 years, I think. So you got to say they're a good team. You have to. This is more about the teams on the bottom of the list. So let's talk about Texas. Texas has really struggled to be great in the last 20 years. We've seen terrible seasons. We've seen great seasons. The problem with Texas is the same problem all of these schools have. They have a great following, an immaculate following, but they're just not winning championships. And yeah, they might be getting there, but they're not winning the championship game. And, USC, Miami, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Washington, Penn State, Oregon, and Wisconsin. It's tough to pick which of these teams has the best fan base because, in all honesty, every single one has an immaculate group of fans. They're just being disappointed. The fans are being so disappointed that it's like, it's almost sad for me to sit here and watch these teams go by. Now, only one team wins a year, and there are about 20 teams up here, a little more than that. So, yeah, can any of these teams win? I think any of these schools probably could. The question is coaching and recruiting. All these teams have super athletic players. But all right, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. All right, let's talk Texas. So Texas, part of the reason that Texas is bad, and I say this because I have to, okay? I believe that Texas's biggest problem, and I've got plenty of notes here, is their coaching over the years. Number one, Mack Brown. When Mack Brown left, I would say the Charlie Strong and the Tom Herman era has been the problem with Texas. And even though Texas makes the most money in football, I just feel like it's just not been good for them. They've maybe it's player development, but they never did win the Big 12 really after that, or even in the SEC, they've done well, but they just can't close. They cannot close the deal. And so Texas fans are riddled with every year they go really decent seasons, double wins, and they might even win the SEC. They might be in the SEC championship game. But they in the playoffs, they just lay an egg, or they miss the playoffs because of some, better SEC team with a worse record getting in. So that's Texas. And to me, the issue is coaching 100%. Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, what's going on? Maybe with, their current coach, he's been around a long time and he's had some pretty, I would call questionable life choices that have landed him where he's at, but also he's really smart and really, really good. I'm not knocking this coach. Sark is a great coach, but I'm just saying that he has been through a lot in his coaching career, and maybe Texas needs somebody that's younger and has more desire, I guess is what I'm getting at. So much to say, but we're just going to leave it at that. USC, last time they won a national title, right? It was 2004. And they have also moved into the Big Ten, just like Texas switched to the SEC. The USC switched to the Big Ten from the Pac-12. I think they just have a severe case of having a hangover, to be honest with you. In 2010, they got nailed with some NCAA sanctions. So I think that's kind of a big deal with Reggie Bush. They struggled with getting scholarships for so long. And then again, Kiffin and Sark have, they've been there. And Helton, by the way. I mean, think about that. There's a link there. But, they're not getting the best out of LA. If you look at the recruiting, they're no longer going to USC. And that's because of technology and because of the ability to reach people in a more personal way than you could back when it was just telephones and letters. So, that was 2004. The internet was around, but it wasn't anywhere close to what it is today. I'm going to go with hangover being the problem there. And the whole Reggie Bush incident, which, by the way, you can't undo. And the sad part is that he's been redeemed and those sanctions have been lifted. But at the same time, the damage has been done. So way to go, NCAA. I guess you could partially blame the NCAA for that one. Let's talk Miami. Even though they had a great year in 2025 and lost the championship game to Indiana, 2001 was the last time that they had any sort of, title in their hand nationally. This is such a complicated mess. There's been a lot of rumors and claims and proof with evidence that the administration is just apathetic. Miami does not have the fear that it used to instill in people years ago. And, I think that, with the school and the university not putting as much focus on athletics and their budget for recruiting being down, that's been reported too. They're way behind the SEC and the Big Ten. And you could say that that's a conference problem too, obviously. But, there was, I think at one time there was like a wall that, you couldn't recruit out of Florida because Miami, FSU, and Gainesville, Florida Gators, they took all of the recruits, all the great ones. That's no longer the case. So I think with the crumble of that happening, there have been a lot of concerns with, are any of these three teams ever going to win a title again? And, so I think that's why Miami's so bad. Let's get to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, I would say, believe it or not, with Lincoln Riley, they were like a juggernaut. But this Oklahoma team, when is the last time, honestly, tell me, that they have had a great defensive side? When have they ever? If you compare Oklahoma, who's now in the SEC, out of the Big 12, they've been there, and can you say that they are defensively as good as Georgia, defensively as good as LSU, even Alabama? No. And Oklahoma has been to the playoffs 4 times and have never won a game. That's why they're on the bottom. Yeah, the list is because they're over 20 years, but they've been there 4 times and they have goose-egged 4 times. I have no faith in Oklahoma ever winning the SEC in upcoming years. I really don't. And the Indiana thing is probably like the chance of it being duplicated by another coach, another school, very low. And they don't expect this to happen. Like, Indiana is getting all of the veteran recruits, trust me. Cignetti has got something good doing there. It's not happening in Oklahoma, if you think that's what's going to happen. But anyway, so that's Oklahoma, the year 2000. That's the last time. At least they won it in this millennium. They're one of the schools that can say that. Moving on to Tennessee. This next group is just grouped together. Tennessee, Nebraska, Notre Dame. But we're going to start with Tennessee. Tennessee has this problem of dysfunction. That's my note, dysfunction. Kiffin was there for 1 year. He was there for a year. And after that, they went through Dooley, Jones, and then Pruitt. And they were under investigation at times too. So again, common theme, under investigation. But I mean, essentially between Alabama and Georgia, because Tennessee's been the SEC, right? They're an SEC favorite. They've been there a long time. They belong there. The issue is that they just never did match up to Georgia and Alabama during the last 20 years. They just couldn't do it. And they do have seasons recently where they're top 25. But again, they just can't match with LSU, Georgia, Alabama. Tennessee's got some issues. 1998, we're approaching 30 years with a championship. Matter of fact, I mean, going to the playoffs has been an issue for them. So they're a team that's been on the downfall for, we can now say, decades. And what's going to turn this program around? They've got a great fan base, just like the next school we're going to talk about, which is Nebraska. Now, if you have been watching or somehow stumbling upon my channel, every year in college football, I predict that Nebraska will have a 500 record or less, since they've been terrible the last 8 to 10 years. And even under Coach Rule, they have been very bad. Not just like, 9-3, 8-4. The fan base expects them to go undefeated. That's part of the school's problem. The mentality of Nebraska is every single preseason, it's We're going to do it. This is finally our comeback year. And it never is. It never is. It actually gets to the point where you can probably, in the last 10 years, spend $100 a season and bet that Nebraska will have a less than 8 or 9 win season. And Vegas and other different sports books will have them at 8 and 9, and you can win every year. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying that it looking back in hindsight, you would have won a lot of money. And Nebraska is one of those teams that will win their first 3 games of the year because they're playing nobody. And then they get into Big Ten play and somebody gets hurt and they end up losing 5 in a row, or they lose 4 games by 2 points apiece. And truthfully, with the whole Raiola situation and his brother and other Nebraska problems that they have, this team is not on the rebound. I don't see it happening. Yes, I understand, fans, that you want Nebraska to be really good, but they're just not getting it done. Recruiting issue. You're in the Big Ten now. The Big Ten is way better than the Big 12 overall. I would think that, if you go back to the 90s when they were really good, they had a pretty good local recruiting base. I think the recruiting base was Midwest, corn-fed, run right down the middle, defense, nasty, linebackers. It's not a thing anymore. Tom Osborne was kind of the last decent coach because Frost was terrible and Rule has not been good. Now, Rule has had a lot of publicity. Matt Rule has had a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but none of it has equated to the W column, if you get my drift. Are they giving him a chance? Yes. Nebraska is giving Matt Rule a chance. So that's fine. Let's talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame. Oh my goodness. What notes do I have here? I want to give them a break, kind of like some other schools like Duke, Northwestern. They have academic standards. Okay. Notre Dame, I don't consider them Ivy League, but locally being in Indiana and having all sorts of Chicago, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, all those teams recruit the same kids locally. And Notre Dame just doesn't get them because they have different standards and they are a religious school at its heart. And so I'm not using that as an excuse, but I'm just saying that maybe because recruiting has changed in the last 10 years, especially in the last 5 years with the transfer portal, maybe Notre Dame's having issues with that. I mean, it's just an idea, just a concept. I think some of you would understand what I'm saying. But I don't think, part of my notes is that I don't think Notre Dame is getting the NFL type recruiting that they used to get. I really believe that Notre Dame at one point had players. Now, do their players still get recruited to the NFL? Yes, but they're not stars. I mean, one of the bigger stars recently is Skoronski, and he was a Northwestern guy that did really good there, and then transferred to Notre Dame this last year when they were really good. So, they're still producing people, but at the end of the day, like, it's just a player development and I wouldn't even say coaching because Freeman's a good coach. The problem is player development and then recruiting, just stringing together 10 wins, right? And the scheduling issue is part of it too. But again, I've reviewed the Notre Dame schedule and for a long time, and it is by and large pretty good, considering the fact that like some of these schools are playing the worst of their conference. And Notre Dame goes out there and they don't, they're getting away from scheduling great teams, which is the problem. But, over the last 20 years, they have had a pretty darn tough schedule to be 11-1, 12-0, 10-2. So, but yeah, they got issues. And Notre Dame fans, I feel you. The Irish are struggling. They are struggling. Oh, next on the list, let's go out west to the West Coast to Washington, University of Washington. Now, 1991, been 35 years now. Um, yeah, 2023, they got into the championship, couldn't hack it. I'd say that Washington is probably victim of the same thing Miami's victim of. They're close to Oregon, and Oregon's getting the recruits. The local recruiting for Washington, I mean, is what it is. When they lost to Michigan, they lost to Michigan in 2023. Michigan just had better players, bottom line. And what you got to say is that Washington has a great program. Washington is one of those schools that when they came to the Big Ten, just made the Big Ten better. But, you know, where have they been in 30 years, honestly, in the talk of being a nationally great team? Like, I just have to put them in this category because they could be great, but there's something holding them back. I'm assuming it's a recruiting problem because they have a great stadium. They have a great location. They have a good fan base. Washington loves their team, and they are good. They do beat good teams. But in the Big Ten, you got to be able to compete recruiting wise. And the Big Ten is just too big now to be able to be like, hey, we're in the Big Ten. Well, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten. You can't use the fact that you're in the Big Ten as a thing. Now, 10 years ago, when there were only 14 teams or 15, you probably could have used that with 14 teams, but you know, they didn't join till later. They were part of the pack that made them 18. Not going to make a difference. But you know, the Huskies. You're going to play the Huskies, you got a good chance you're going to lose. So good team, just not great, just not nationally relevant right now. Let's talk about Penn State. Of all of the teams on here, this is the team that I struggle with the most as to why people consider them still nationally relevant. ESPN, I'm going to call them all out. Fox Sports, CBS Sports, all of these broadcasting companies, they're doing right by business by putting Penn State on the forefront of the discussion. But for a team that hasn't won a title in 40 years, look, this list is a team of 20 years. Penn State would make this list if it was 40 years, 1986. And the thing is that they are a top 10 program in the last couple decades, especially the last decade. I think that, just throwing this out there, the Sandusky issue set them so far back because right when Sandusky thing was happening, that is when the college football playoff era was beginning. That was when teams were able to enter the national conversation, and you know, because they expanded the teams that could make the possibility of getting the title, and Penn State was excluded from that. So I think that is part of it, and how you recover from a penalty like that, I don't know. But with Joe Pa leaving and them struggling to find somebody that was as good as he was coaching wise, that's an issue. And that goes for any school. If you look at this list, that's on the list. That's why coaching is so important. So Penn State, yeah. And then the whole Franklin debacle of them letting him go over a couple terrible losses. I mean, are you fireable at a school if you are top 10 every other year, string a few years of those together, make the college football playoffs, and then have a bad year? The answer obviously is yes, that it does happen. But given the fact that they haven't won a title since 1986, it's like, what kind of standard are you holding? It's just going to push the team even further down. So, is what it is. Oregon, Big Ten school, Big Ten power, winning power, but not a championship power, not a championship school power. Oregon has this thing where they do get good recruits. Dan Lanning's a great coach. They're in a good conference. They have a great fan base. They've had the coolest uniforms for the last 15 years. They've had NFL drafts that are starting today in the NFL. But can you get over the Ohio State hump? No, you can't. Now, you beat Ohio State, then they beat you. So when it mattered more. And I'm going to tell you that that's part of the problem being in the Big Ten is that you've got, if you look at this top list, you've got Ohio State, Michigan, and now Indiana. So all of these teams that are down here that are from the Big Ten, to include what we're going to talk about next, Wisconsin, I think this is the team that has struggled the most. Penn State has had innumerable amount of chances to win the national title, even in the college football playoff era. And they just couldn't. They just haven't. I don't see them being good even this year. You can put them in the top 25. Doesn't matter. I don't see them being good. The Big Ten is too deep in order for Penn State to recover that fast. Wisconsin. Hello, Badger world. Let's give it up for Wisconsin in the fact that they, at one time, were a ground and pound team. And when the Big Ten, it's just the only reason they're up here is because when the Big Ten had separated divisions in their conference, at one time it was leaders and legends. At one time it was East and West. Wisconsin was in there with teams like Iowa and Northwestern. And truth be told, when you have a conference split that has Ohio State and Michigan in the same conference, when you go to the Big Ten championship, it's only going to be Ohio State or Michigan versus Wisconsin and whoever else might win if Wisconsin has a down year. A couple years it was Northwestern. A couple years it was Iowa. A couple years it was mostly Wisconsin. And they were in the national spotlight because had they won the Big Ten championship game, they would have went to the playoffs when it was only 4 teams. And even before then, the chances of Wisconsin being 10-2 were pretty high. But now, in the last 20 years, let's just actually say the last 10 years, Wisconsin has been persona non grata. They've not been there. They have not had anybody since Jonathan Taylor. You can correct me, but I think the program's bad. The Luke Fickell thing. Again, last year I did a little bit of talking about Luke Fickell, and I did a couple shorts that said Luke Fickell's on the hot seat. He's still there. So I was wrong. I think he's still on the hot seat. If the hot seat can be 2 or 3 years, I don't know. Hot seat usually means like this is the last season or else. So I was wrong, but I will say that he should have been fired or they should have at least, said something like, we got to start winning more games and getting better players, or maybe they've done that internally. I don't know, but he does get some recruits. But who else? When you look at these teams, it's like this. Of all the good coaches out there, there must not be that many great coaches. Because if there were, these teams on the bottom would probably have a title in the last 20 years. The good coaches are going to different schools for different reasons. It's not all about money to the coaches. It's mostly about money, but it's not all about money. There are other factors included, like facilities, like athletic directors, opportunity with assistant coaches and opportunity with staffs and going into a conference that has, you know, um, or excuse me, going into a program that has had a winning record or a national championship or something like that. There are other factors. So yeah, and that's kind of my take. So when I say that these teams versus these teams, what I'm saying is that sure, if LSU plays Tennessee, it's going to be a great game. If Notre Dame plays Alabama, it's probably going to be a great game. If Indiana plays Oregon, it's probably going to be a good game. But somehow the teams that are on the top, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Michigan, those teams are doing really good compared to their peer competition at the high level. Why do you get these schools back? What do we got to do? What do we need to do? I don't know. We'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, Texas, not getting it done. USC, not getting it done. Miami, even though they were there last year, not getting it done. The Sooners, Oklahoma, not getting it done. Tennessee, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Penn State, Oregon, Wisconsin, and the Washington Huskies. Man, notable programs, no titles in 20 years. Why?